Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Around the World in 40 Tales. My name is Doreen Vanderstoep, and I'm here with my fellow Storytelling Alberta member, friend Gordon Churchill. Welcome, Gord.
Thank you. It's good to
It
be
is
here.
great to be here with you again. This is Gord's second story gift for our 40th anniversary, and I'm truly grateful, Gord, for your gift today
It's
again.
fun to do.
Gord is going to share a family story today from right here in Alberta called Killing the Chicken. Now, I have enjoyed all of Gord's stories, I can absolutely say, but this is truly one of my favorites. So I'm so excited that you are gifting this particular story today.
Yeah.
Now, before we dive in, I would like to acknowledge, in the spirit of gratitude and reconciliation, that Storytelling Alberta operates on the traditional territories of the Indigenous signatories to Treaties 4, 6, 7, 8, and 10. And this land includes the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Gordon Churchill is a storyteller, woodworker, and retired minister. He began storytelling while working in the United Church as a clergy person, and he expanded this pursuit by exploring his family history and joining Storytelling Alberta, which was then known as Tales. He has told many kinds of stories in multiple venues. He has also told stories at Story Slam Calgary and The Moth in New Orleans. He believes that stories are a meld of the intended storyline, the reactions of the audience, and the creativity of the moment, even in a recording. Gordon, please go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Doreen. I was about 10 years of age in 1960. My cousin was a couple of years older. And my parents, who at this point in their life were 69 and 49, were, I think, hoping that they would get a little peace and quiet because they packed me up and shipped me off to my cousins who lived on a farm in the Bentley area. My parents had both grown up on farms and cherished that experience for their children. I don't know what they did with that time when I wasn't around, but there were no more other children, so I think I know at least one thing they weren't doing. My cousin and I had a competitive relationship, as most boys of that age will. And my cousin had a German last name, Gorski, and that made it hard because in central Alberta, at least, in the late 50s and the early 60s, having a German last name was not a good thing. And of course, with my last name being Churchill, that left the only alternative as the Second World War between us. And we acted it out with a lot of regularity. Now, when I arrived at the farm, it was raining, and it rained for 5 days solid. My uncle could, of course, go out and look after the cattle and fix machinery, but my aunt was stuck in the house with two very competitive and lively boys. And on the first day when the sun shone, she stood at the kitchen door and very sternly said, "Out." And we went. Now, I think this may have been planned between the two of them, because my uncle met us as we walked on the sidewalk from the house, and he said, "If you go to the shop and get a handsaw and go out in the bush and cut yourselves twigs or branches with a crotch in them, I'll show you how to make slingshots." So that sounded great. And we went off and we found a couple because maybe they wouldn't be perfect. And we brought them back. And indeed, my uncle taught us how to make slingshots. He had the best inner tube from a bicycle and leather for the pockets and how to make the knots. But I think as he was, and we were all working on it together, he began to have second thoughts about whether this was really a good project for us. And so slowly the rules began to emerge. I'd rather you didn't shoot each other in the head. No stones. Stay away from the buildings where there are any windows that might be broken. Stay out of your aunt's hen yard. And so there was a whole bunch of constraints, but we finally realized that the pasture, which had been wet for quite a while and in the warm weather was producing puffballs and mushrooms in great quantity, would therefore be a perfect place to act out the Second World War. And we went. Now, if you're not familiar with puffballs are usually about, an inch and a half in diameter. They're like a mushroom, but unlike the mushrooms, when they get too wet, they turn kind of brown and squidgy on the inside, which makes them perfect for slingshots. And so, with my cousin emulating a Panzer division and knowing the terrain because it was his farm, the war began. And we shot each other. And every time you were hit with one of the puffballs that was squidgy, it left a mark. And so coup was counted as we went along with this war. Unfortunately, there is not an unlimited supply of ammunition, even in a large pasture. And when we ran out of puffballs, we then found cow pies. And some of them were harder, and some of them were softer, and some of them left marks, which had an odor, which was even better. But someone, and I don't know who it was, whether it was me or my cousin, in picking up a cow pie, also got a stone. And if one person does it, then the other person can do it. This was getting painful. And I was beating a retreat, not particularly watching where I was going, and found myself in the middle of my aunt's hen yard. Now, I don't know who shot at who, but a stone caught my aunt's prize layer in the back of the head, and it went down. Now, nothing brings end to war like a larger enemy. And my aunt was definitely the larger enemy. And so hostilities ceased, and we looked at each other and we said, what do we do now? And my cousin said, well, if we plucked it, she wouldn't be half as mad. So we took the chicken and we went over to the burn barrel and we pulled off all its feathers. And we did a really good job. We got right down to the pin feathers. We wanted this to be done right. And then each of us taking a wing, we carried the chicken between us to the house. And we laid it on the back stoop just by the back door. And we went in. And it took us some time to actually tell my aunt that we had killed her prize laying hen. And eventually we got it out and she said, well, let's go look at this chicken. And we went out the back door of the house and looked at this stoop. There was no chicken. Where was it? And I would not have spotted it, except I looked up at my aunt, who had a lovely laugh. And I followed her eye line out to last summer's peep hatch, where there was a naked chicken running around without so much as a stitch on, and greatly aggravated at the experience as well. My aunt was trying very hard not to laugh, and she said something like, well, I suppose I could knit a sweater for it. And then she fell back into gales of laughter. And then she got very serious. And she said, you have to catch it. And you have to kill it. And you have to clean it. and we're eating it for supper. So we caught it and we took it out to the tree stump that was beside the hen yard, and we cut its head off. And then we cleaned it, and we found 2 almost completely developed eggs inside of it. So we were convinced that this was the prize laying hen. And then we took it up to the house, and my aunt cooked it, letting us know that we were not welcome in the house until supper time. She was still cherishing her moments of silence without us. I've always liked roast chicken as a kid, and I don't remember it being as tasty that night. Somehow there was another flavor to it that was never quite the same. Now, I called that story when I first told it, Killing the Chicken. But I also realized it could also be called How Things Don't Always Turn Out the Way You Have Them Planned. So there you go, Doreen.
Thank you, Gord. Amazing story, as always. Never tire of it, and look forward to hearing it the next time, for sure.
Okay.
I just want to thank Gord and to thank all of our listeners today for joining us for another episode of Around the World. If you want to contact Gord or any of us at Storytelling Alberta, just email us at info@storytellingalberta.com. And make sure you check out our website, storytellingalberta.com, for all of our offerings for our 40th anniversary. There is a plentiful amount of videos there to enjoy. And we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us around the world.
G'day.